Good. Yeah. What's going on, guys? Tambo here. First time ever hosting an E9. So, two things about that. One, I get to be the host and have a guest. Two, I get to be the one setting the rankings so I don't have to fuck it up like when I was on Mayo. So, it'll be exciting for me tonight. I'm going to get to start with the E9 here, and then we'll jump right in afterwards. We'll take a short break, and then we are going to come back. Rick's going to stay on with us, thankfully. I'll introduce him in a sec. But we've got Rick Gehman here from Rick Run Good at Rick Run Good at DFSondemand.com. Rick, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it. I like being on this side of the mic where everything's on you. I just get to sit here and talk, and you get to guide us. This is the easy part for me.
It's so much better. Yeah, I love it. And I have a special hotel room. I'm away for work this week. And if you notice, I'm fireside with Phil.
I saw that. It looks good, man. You get a Phil thumbs up for that.
Yeah, really though. It was actually a last minute thing where I was supposed to go somewhere else this week, and then my boss flipped it on me. So the hotel that I normally stay at was sold out. So I picked this hotel thinking, oh, we'll see what it's like. And it's like a 1970s suite. So
yeah, baby, that's going to be your new hotel moving forward. I can feel it.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, well, it's going to be exciting. We're here tonight. We're going to talk some Greenbrier Classic, the military tribute. There's a long name to it that I can't remember off the top of my head because it changes so often, but we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll get into some of the questions here in a little bit, but open up the show. You and I joked a little bit beforehand. You've had some hot takes lately on the old Twitter machine, or maybe you didn't mean to be hot takes, but they came across that way. But you did mention something about these majors maybe not mattering so much, and then we go and see Rory win the Player of the Year today.
People do not follow me for hot takes. Let's just throw that out there. But I've had a couple of spicy ones recently. The spiciest is I kind of questioned why majors were even so important. And to me, that's like a thought exercise. Like, why are they more important? I'm not saying that they're not. But my case was kind of centered around, Rory should probably be your Player of the Year. It doesn't really, I'm not really that concerned that he didn't show up in four random events throughout the year, and kind of a little validated, a little excited to see him get the trophy today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I saw the post. I like the post. I think you make a good point. I guess for me, I mentioned before I get that it's their Super Bowl, right? It's, Jordan has 6 rings. So that's what we talk about, so-and-so. That makes sense. So something has to count. But like you said, and when you talk about consistency in the year and all the factors that go into it, the numbers really, to me, weren't that close. So when people are calling it a snub on Brooks Koepka and saying, he's automatic to win all the majors now, well, 1, he shows up in all the majors anyway. 2, Rory had a better year. I don't care how you shake it down, not just on the stat sheet, but if you look at the whole board and everything he did, the players, the RBC Canadian Open, the Tour Championship over Brooks from 5 strokes back. I mean, I can't see why he doesn't deserve it. It's just crazy that people take it the wrong way sometimes, or that we're against them. It's not that. We're just saying that we see it this way.
Right. And my big thing, obviously the majors are more important because the players tell you that, but they really only tell you that because they've just been trained, and we've all been trained that majors are more important. They're historic. They've got this prestige. But yeah, my big thing was the resume for Rory was still unbelievable. The guy had 2 top 10s in majors. He was 21st at the Masters. And then I know he missed the cut at the Open Championship, but didn't he have like the best second round out of anybody? Like, I mean, he played 33 and a half perfect holes at Portrush. 2.5 of them he blew up and he misses the cut. Like, okay, the guy had 2.5 holes that were pretty bad. Then he goes out and wins what everyone considers to be the toughest field at the Players. He wins the RBC Canadian, which is certainly no scrub event. And then, to your point, Tambo, 5 shots back in the new format, wins it with or without strokes. The guy had an absolute stud season, top 10s all over the place. Brooks had a great year too, but to me, I don't think it was all that close.
Yeah. And we'll see if Brooks even cares. They joke that he only cares about majors anyway. So maybe he doesn't care. He won the other award. It really doesn't matter, but it's just fun to debate it back and forth. Yeah. Obviously, you can tell we're getting into a new season here with the swing seasons. So we're looking for anything to talk about, right? That's sort of what it comes down to.
For sure.
I think it'll be fine. Let's get to the Greenbrier here, Rick. We'll start it off, I guess. Maybe tell me a little bit of, what you're looking for this week. Besides, we'll get into the players here shortly, but when it comes to stats, when it comes to overall feel, first event of the year, the layoffs that guys have had, what things stand out to you right off the hop?
Yeah, it's really tough for a lot of the reasons that you just mentioned. Being here in the first spot of the season, guys have had, varying levels of time off. Some guys have been off for like 2 weeks. Some guys have been off for 6 weeks. Some guys have been rehabbing injuries. There is so much unknown when it comes to recent form that we're really just speculating on a lot of these guys. On the other side of it, when we usually look at course history, yeah, we've seen Greenbrier before, but it wasn't last year. Then we had the year that was washed out, and we've never seen it here in September. It usually is played in the middle of the season, like July. So, we don't even have a lot of great, course history to go off of. They're brand new green complexes. There's just a lot going on. And then you take 40 guys who have never played Greenbrier, 21 of them being rookies, and you throw them into the mix. And this pot that we have to try to figure out is going to be incredibly difficult. So I'm just going to take it from a very simplified standpoint. Give me strokes gained tee to green. Give me guys who hit their approach as well. That stuff translates to every single course. I'm just going to try to get some of these really good pedigree golfers and then mix in some of these, young Korn Ferry guys the best I can.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think that's good points that you made. The time of year is definitely a different factor. Like you said, the rookies. I talked about a little bit with Kenny on the Gens pod this week, just about some of the rookie stats and how they've actually done quite well here in the past. Not just the new up and coming, back then Webb or Korn Ferry now, but the actual just guys the first time to play the course. So I definitely think you could see an outsider win. Some of the, the random ones up top are there. We'll open it up to questions. Obviously, anybody wants to ask any questions as we go along, but I think we'll just look at it sort of from a top-down approach, kind of how Kenny and I do on the pod. I guess, a second take on it. And now that we've had some more time to let it stew, but at the top, you got some different names here, right? Obviously, the popular one and Victor Hovland, who we're all excited to see. That was a guy we just knew was going to get his card, and it was only a matter of time. Got it done very quickly and handily on the Korn Ferry Tour to round out the season. Didn't even have to play in the Korn Ferry Tour Championship because he locked it up with a second the week before. But what do you see up here? I mean, it looks like Bryson will get no ownership. I'm not sure if anyone's going to follow, what I'm thinking on Kokrak because his price is up there. Leishman is up there. Bubba doesn't seem like he's getting any traction. Are you playing any of these guys or just Hovland?
Yeah, I think this is really polarizing. Hovland to me, and this is no shock, right? Clearly, to me, the best player in the field with, the best form, right? I'm not talking long-term. That's probably Bryson, whatever you want to talk about. But Hovland playing the best right now, even in a limited sample size. What we have seen from him over the course of the last 6 months has been nothing short of spectacular. It feels like he's capable of winning, which is really my only knock against Jason Kokrak here, Tambo. I love Jason Kokrak. I played a ton of Jason Kokrak last year. Actually, fun fact, he had the highest average value of anybody on tour last season. So if you take his salary and do the value calculation like we normally do for NBA or NFL, Jason Kokrak's your value man. Wow. I played a ton of him throughout the year, but my concern is at this price, he's got to win the golf tournament. And I don't know how often Jason Kokrak wins this golf tournament. We've seen him contend top 20, top 15, maybe even top 10. And that's great when he's $7,800, but this is a different monster. I'm not that sure he can get it done in a way that I've at least seen Hovland knock on the door, second place finish down there at the Korn Ferry, the second to last playoff event, I believe. Fourth place on the PGA Tour. Just feels like he's closer to actually raising the trophy on Sunday. So that's kind of how I differentiate those two. And then the other three guys over 10K, if Bryson goes out and wins this thing, great. I won't have a piece of it. I've got no hope in Bubba. I don't really want to pay $10,002 for Leishman. So I'm writing off all three of those guys.
Yeah, and that's why we're here, right? The E9 is typically for us to chat about what we've learned throughout the week and what we've saw and seen and went back and looked into and everything. And I believe it was on the Mail Pod that you were on and made a good point about Kokrak. With that said, you just mentioned, how often do we see him win? The answer is easy. It's zero. We don't see him win because he doesn't win. So
right.
I actually took a step back. Let me ask you this before I say what I was going to say. What are you playing for volume this week? What tournaments? How much? You don't have to talk about the money exactly, but I mean, are you playing a 20 max spread? Are you playing 5 main lineups, 3 max? What are you doing?
Yeah, so that's actually a great segue. We're like going on tour here. I haven't even announced this. I'm focusing a lot on single entry this season. I really think it's a part of the game that I want to really hone in on because of the way that I usually approach my strategy, where it's like the 20 max, but I use a core cascading method. I think that if I'm able to hone in my single lineup, my one core, it's going to help me to really expand out to be better at 3 maxes, be better at 20 maxes, eventually be better at 150. So what I'm actually going to do is I've committed to every week this year, I'll play the $200 single entry, which I think is the driver. I think the $100 is the long drive. I think the 200 is the driver.
Something like that. I think it's the Stinger now for the 100.
Oh, okay. Stinger, whatever they call it.
Right. Yeah. For the 200.
So I'll play the 200 single entry, and then obviously when we get Mayo's tournament back. But this week it's basically that tournament, sprinkling a few other lineups. I mean, there was like 8 guys I really wanted to play, so I just kind of made different combinations of them, and I always keep a really tight pool. Throw a couple into the $8 in case I end up hitting the nuts, but that 200 single entry is going to be my main focus for a while.
Yeah, no, and I like that. I think you brought up a good point. One, I mean, I know your core cascading method has been incredible, helped you at the Masters there. I believe it was 2 years ago now, but people just ran with it and they love it. And I laughed at how you just sort of said, well, I just sort of made that up, but it makes so much sense, right? If you can pin it down in reality, and I'm a big MME guy, but in reality, every lineup you make after the main or the best or whatever you want to call it, you're sort of decreasing your chances. Well, in some cases, if you're leveraging accurately, you're kind of increasing them, but typically statistically, I should say the first line is the line. So I really like that. I have been working myself on 3 to 5 max, just because when it comes to majors or it comes to the big events, or let's say this year, if we get the what is it? The FFGWC, it would be, right? That's what it's going to be. Most likely a live event.
I guess that's what they're going to call it. Yeah.
I think that's what it's. No, it's the FGWC, the Fantasy Golf World Championship. That's going to be it. So assuming we get that there this year with a live event, I'll be back in. I boycotted a little this past year with paying the rake to get in, to be forced into it and whatever. So I basically would go back to that. I think if you have even one, you're only going to get 1 to 3 in that most times if you're lucky. So you got to get better at that and be practicing and honing your skills throughout the year. So what I was going to say is, I ended up with like 10 lineups, right? And normally I'm playing like 150, but it just doesn't this week. I don't like the $8 because, well, it's so cool to see 100K up top on the first week of the swing season. Look at second place.
Such a bad tourney.
Especially with the field. Like I got Benny Ann. Who else do you got? Neiman, Scott Piercy, all these guys that can't make a putt, that I'm going to be screwed if I'm waiting until the last minute and I lose 100 grand down to 25 over one putt at the end. Yeah. I'd rather see it a little more balanced, but that's okay. I get they got to put their numbers up, but with that said, back to the Kokrak point, I sort of went off him a little bit. I've got him in 2 out of the 10 right now, which maybe is still overweight, but it feels like more and more people have brought him up. And I think you made the best point, like you said, just about going off of him. So next range, we can look at it. Don't see a lot of questions there yet, but this looks like the action-packed zone here from 9K Cam Smith up to 9,800 Sung Jae. Talk to me about that range, maybe 2 of your favorite plays. What are your guys? Let me ask you this, actually. There's Ann, Neiman, and Im, and you can only pick 2. Who do you pick?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's like my nightmare. Like I love this 9K range. If I could play everyone in here, I would. I love it so much. Oh man, Benny on I locked into basically every lineup. He was the one, and as I was building, never really came out of it. If you look just straight tee to green, because hashtag team no putt, right? Like look tee to green. No, I think only Victor Hovland's better tee to green than Benny on is. So like he was the one I locked in. I really struggled between Neiman and Sung Jae. Sung Jae can make a ton of birdies. Neiman has at least showed up here with a really good finish the last time this event was held. So I really went back and forth on this. You put a gun to my head, I would probably go Neiman over Sung Jae, but it's super razor thin. And then like Scotty Scheffler's here, right? Like there's a name that everybody wants to get into. Like the 9s are so hard because it's so good, which I guess is a good problem to have, but it made for a lot of difficult decisions this week.
Yeah, I'm with you on most of that. The one I'm still not fully, I keep clicking back and forth with the buttons on is Neiman versus M, because Ann is a staple for me. I love Ann this week. I think there's just no way to go back. I think it's, like if you look at the caliber of the guys there, like Scheffler and Ann, obviously I love Scheffler. He's an up and comer. The Corn Ferry season was awesome for him. He had a win in like one of the last 3 Corn Ferry events of the year. So, I mean, he's fire. But if you got Ann, who's right there, this is the guy that was, almost winning multiple PGA events and was right in the mix of those fields. So feels like a good time for him to bust out. I did bet him at the start of the week at 28-1. So I like him there. The rest.
Let me ask you this, Tambo, because I think you brought up a really good point where we have a clear delineation of guys who have played PGA Tour events, and a lot of them, and guys who haven't, but we think so highly of. So I've been trying to walk the line kind of on this, where it's like, oh man, like I want Scotty Scheffler and I want all these guys we've never seen before. But I kind of had to step back and be like, okay, let's put this into perspective, right? I can't take 6 guys who are making their debut this week or 6 guys who are now first-time card holders. So like, how did you balance, like an Andrew Landry who plays a lot on the PGA Tour with, mixed results, or someone like, and maybe Scotty Scheffler's not a good example because he has a win and he's $9,300, but like a Tom Lewis who, might play great on the Euro Tour, or someone else who might play well on the Corn Ferry Tour. When you're comparing those prices, like how are you comparing guys on different tours here?
Yeah, good question. And you hit the nail on the head a little bit, because to me, you answered it. You can't play all guys like that. So a couple examples that I thought of right away, you mentioned Tom Lewis, Gold Damon's right there. You know what I mean? I've got some Tom Lewis because I think he's a good player. He is good in Euro as well as Corn Ferry. He came over and won like it was nothing. Obviously, he's very talented. But, Damon is right there. So, and Damon didn't really do anything wrong to get me off him. It's not like a Holmes or a Zach Johnson or guys like that obviously are great tour pros, but they struggled throughout the season. You look at certain names in certain areas. Another one was you just talked about Landry versus Haggy. Yep. Again, I'm on Landry. That's one there that we can talk about. That's a pivot for me. I like Haggy. I watched a lot of him on the Corn Ferry Tour. He finished really strong himself. I don't hate that you put him in. I mean, obviously you got to take some risks, and he's an up and coming talent, but David Hearn, Landry, guys like that are right there. I mean, to me, they've been begging for a field like this that they can actually have a chance. Whereas the other fields, they feel like you got to think confidence wise, what their mindset is. They probably feel like they can win all the time, but they know it's extremely difficult. They'd rather be in a field that's more suited to their skill set than be in a major field or something like that, where they're just happy to be there.
I think you're right. I mean, I think a guy like Joel Damon is a great example, because I think he should show up in West Virginia this week licking his chops, right? I mean, he knows if he's usually, I don't know, the 50th best golfer in the field or the 60th best golfer in the field, he might show up this week and feel like he's the 20th best golfer, the 15th best golfer. And he might think he has a real chance, where, literally a quarter of the field first of all has never played this event, and then an eighth of it has never played a PGA Tour event. Like, it's going to be a lot of wide-eyed and bushy-tailed guys when they show up at the first tee, like, holy crap, this is what a PGA Tour event looks like, and it's business as usual for Joel Damon. So I was really struggling with that as I was building, because I'm excited to play these guys, right? I wanted to play Scotty Scheffler, I wanted to play Doug Gim, I wanted to play all these guys who we've heard so much about, but there's a reason that they weren't on the PGA Tour. So I've tried to just mix them in, but really step back and say, okay, let's go with what we know.
For sure. And I think it was you as well on the pod with Mayo there that mentioned about, you know what I mean? You want to play all these shiny new toys, but guess what? If you miss out on them, and let's say Haggy wins this week and you were like, oh, I played Landry instead, like, he's not going to skyrocket to like 40% next week. He's not going to skyrocket $3,000 in price tag next week. It just doesn't work that way. So, I mean, it sucks to miss his win. I'm just saying it's not to say he can't compete again next week at lower ownership. And we all know what happens with, daily fantasy golf is people don't want to play the winner the next week or the guy that does really well. It's almost like it's a double negative to them.
And you know what, Tambo, there'll be a new shiny toy next week that we can play.
That's right. All right, let's do some questions. We got a few in here now that we babbled on a little bit, but I think it's all great information and it's what people want to know, right? Everyone's probably doing what you're doing with a 1 to 5 max type deal, even myself doing just 10. So this is helpful. Question here. What do you think is going to be more popular this week? Stars and scrubs or balanced?
Oh man, that's okay. This is literally the problem I had trying to figure out. I think it's stars and scrubs because I don't think you're going to get. I think everyone wants to play Victor Hovland, and I think that there are really good value plays from some of these Corn Ferry Tour guys. And I think actually the industry has done a pretty good job of being like, hey, Christopher Ventura and like Chase Seifert and like all these guys that you could potentially play that are $6,500. I think it makes it a little bit easier to go stars and scrubs. The fact that the 8K range, at least to me, I don't know how you feel about it, Tambo, is like a wasteland. I think naturally it's going to be a little bit more stars and scrubsy.
Yeah, the 8K range is pretty terrible, but we'll see what happens with that. I'm sure someone will put together a line of the perfect pairing of all of them and somehow take down a tournament. I think it'll be funny. I think at the end of this week, we either see a lineup with like 3 or more guys from the 8K range win it, or I think we see like, McLovin or someone that's got, 150 or whatever the max is this week with like, Bryson Hovland lineup that they just mix and find all the combinations they can with the scrubs down low. So
if somebody from the 8K wins, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think most people are. So again, I talked about this lots, but if you got 10 lineups, I've got one of my 10. And again, it's still dominoes. You got to hit the exact combination. So it's not meaning anything. It's just if 4 of them hit, you could have one of the better 5 or 6s and get up there that way. If it's not a big 6 or 6 week with the new rules or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I do think that's getting a little bit stretched. We got a couple more questions here, but I think the top 65 thing, like I'm not really changing anything for that. It's really only takes away from the sweat on Saturday. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like when I'm building a lineup with 6 golfers, I'm trying to get all 6 in the top 6. So I'm not really, wondering will they be 68th or 65th. That's just a product of its environment or how it shakes out. So, and then obviously the second sweat. I'm more than happy that the MDF is gone. It was one of the worst things on the planet for a fantasy golf player, but I don't really care when I'm building my lineups about will more guys make the cut or not, or will 6 of 6 be higher or not. That doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah, I don't think it's really going to impact too much, except over the course of the season we'll just see fewer 6 of 6s, quite honestly. But yeah, I'm happy to exchange that for the not MDF sweat, which was the nut low.
Right, for sure. Okay, good. All right, so a couple more questions here. You mentioned Hovland. I mentioned him. Everyone mentioned him. What would you do with him in single entry? They want to know, would you fade him or would you lock him? What's the play? You got one lineup. Do you use him or not?
So I will tell you that I used him, but I did not make that decision because of him. I made that decision because of the other 5 guys. I think in general, in a single entry, everyone goes chalkier. So Tambo, I think you kind of alluded to this where when you have a single entry and you're making your absolute best lineup, the trend is that the chalk is even chalkier because if I have 150 lineups, I can make 75% of them without Victor Hovland and still have a little taste of him. If I don't have a taste of him in single entry, I have 0% of them. So usually the chalky is even chalkier. I think if that is like your decision that you have to make, you should probably fade him. I didn't because I was able to get a little bit more differentiated in places that I wanted to across my other 5 guys. But I mean, if you have him at like 26% in the $8, he's going to be upwards of 30 in a single entry.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's much like in football when people, which we'll be talking later, but people put their cash lineup in a single entry. So you sort of know what you're going up against walking into the tournament. Obviously, game theory says find someone around that and differentiate it. Like you mentioned before, and I sort of leaned back on and agreed was with Coke Rack. I'm sort of talking myself into this on the air here, but you've got a 5 wins in the last year for $200 more sitting right above him. We just have no clue where he's at, but he's Bryson DeChambeau and he's right there for $200 more. I don't know. I got a single entry too. I'm only playing the $100 single entry. That's all I figured I would get into this week for big ones. Like I'm really focused on football, but dialed into the pick still. And that just makes me think now maybe I should pull Hovland from that line because he's in that one as well and maybe just go right to Bryson.
I mean, is there anybody that you like? I would not be surprised if Bryson just spent like the last 3 weeks like burning through gloves on the range and trying to figure everything out, right? He's a grinder. Sometimes that doesn't work for him. Sometimes it really does. It's so hard to try to figure out where these guys are at. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't blame you. I won't do it, but I couldn't blame you.
Yeah, they're all grinding for it, like you said. And we got to wonder too when you see the names like Bryson, Leishman, Bubba. Like when you think off the top of your head, like what are they even doing here? And they're probably taking a little bit of the well, even earlier, but the Kuchar approach to last year, where Kuchar kind of got 2 wins early, not in the swing season, but he got his 2 wins, and then he just coasted the
Yeah.
rest of the year, and even got to start. It sucked that his game fell off because what did he start like eighth in new format? Like he was right in the mix. He actually had a
Yeah,
shot there,
and you're right. He banked a lot of that. One at Mayakoba, which was the swing season. Then he got the second one, at Sony, I think. And yeah, I mean, that is going to be a strategy we see more and more of. The schedule's so tight now that if you want to take a few weeks off, you're going to have to play right now. And it's an easy one for Bubba because he's got a place there. But some of these other guys, I think it's smart. Just go try to get some wins in these early season events and see how that really helps you come August of 20, what would that be? 2020.
Mhm. No, for sure. And that's, I think, a big thing of the new schedule and everything. They want to bank it now so they can have some more time off because you saw what happened at the end of the year last year. Like Casey had to take a week off. He was fine with it because of the volatility of the Tour Championship, but it was like, and he knew he'd be in it, but it's like you don't want to play 7 weeks in a row. And then this year you got the Olympics throw a wrench in there as well. So, I mean, yeah, I can see why some of these guys want to get it done. Pretty sure I've talked.
And it's a Ryder Cup year now, so like Leishman's going to be playing a lot of golf if he makes it all the way to East Lake. You know what I mean? Like there's just a lot of golf on the schedule right now, so I think it's smart to start playing these events.
So play a Bryson Leishman lineup.
Oh God,
that'll be what we.
You'll be the only one who has it.
Yeah, that'll be what we both don't do, but what we recommended, and we can still take credit for it, right? We recommend based on our conversations tonight. So
hedge our bets here.
Yeah, hedge our bets. We don't get any money for that, but it's all for the people, right? I love it. Let's go. Couple more, and then we'll get off here. But next one is thoughts on Hearn, Watney, and Landry. So any of those tickle your fancy? You like these guys?
Hearn and Watney, I have zero opinion on. It's not good or bad. I don't have to have an opinion on every player. I think Landry does make sense. He strikes the ball well enough. He played well coming down the stretch. I think 3 of his best finishes were probably in the last month or 2 of the season. So I think Landry makes a lot of sense, but he's probably going to come with a steeper ownership, but that ownership might only be 10% or something like that. So Landry is the only guy out of those 3 that sticks out, and I'm not sure it's that close.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I like Landry the best by far, but it comes with the ownership. So it is what it is. So yeah, it was, most people found it out today or saw it on Twitter somewhere, but Hovland and Ventura, who we've talked about, you talked about them on the pod with Mayo. I talked about them with Kenny. Both those guys played the Big 12 championship here last year, which is awesome. That's good for them and did well, even for like Hovland did well. But would you favor that for any reason? Like, does that add to it and you're excited about it? Or do you think because the course setup's different, the conditions are changed, that it doesn't matter at all? It's just like them or don't. Either way, they're going to be good. So
yeah, generally, like I think it's great, but I'm not like running to get more of them because I found that out. I mean, these guys show up and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday get to learn what the course is like this week. Obviously, the Big 12 championship is not going to be set up in the same way that a military tribute at the Greenbrier is, right? So going to be different conditions, going to be probably playing a little bit differently. I don't know. The Big 12 is I think it was 3 rounds. But it's one of those things where, hey, it's cool and all, but I'm not swayed one way or another over it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you. That's sort of exactly how I feel about it, just because I liked them already. That's just fuel to the fire that they've got to see the course before and whatever, but it's going to be different. So it doesn't really matter. You either like them or you don't. And really, we talked enough about Hovland. It comes down to Ventura. Is Ventura a value play? Yes.
I was just going to say, the second I saw him at like 6,300, I had him locked into every lineup anyway. So like you could have told me he played the Big 12 championship and he shot 93 times or whatever. I'd be like, all right, well, it's a different course. Like I don't really care. The kid's clearly an absolute stud. That program at Oklahoma State keeps pumping these guys out. And yeah, I was going to play him one way or another. He opens up so much for the rest of your lineup.
Yeah, and it's the joke of the first Norwegian Oklahoma State golfer to get his PGA card. Who was Victor Hovland? No, who was Christopher Ventura? So
there you go.
That's a Jeopardy question that will never exist, but we got you covered on that as well. So last couple here. Jay North, I'll answer. He asked, how contrarian would it be to play Ann, Im, and Neiman? I don't think it'll be super contrarian. Obviously, it'll be a little bit because it's the idea behind it is you're fading Hovland. So yes, you're getting the other three studs in. I do like it. Those just happen to be the three most popular. So I would just say if you're gonna go that route, that I would make sure that you are mixing it up. Don't get Landry and Sloan, because that's where the chalk is going for the guys below it. You can't have all of those guys. I'm not saying it can't work. There's smaller fields, but something like the $8, you're going to be duplicated probably more than once.
I don't think you'll be as different as you think you are. I guess is the way to put it. You nailed it. I think it's going to be a logical starting point for anybody who doesn't play Hovland, and then those are the three most popular guys.
Yeah, and now we've talked enough about Ventura, so has everybody else. So he gets clicked in. So really now you're putting yourself in a 2v2 versus the rest of the field. Yeah. I would say maybe leave $500 or more off the table if you're going to do that, because you're going to just to try and be different. Am I scared of the Dolphins? No, the Ravens pounded them, and that was just a last minute, fan base thing where you always worry a little bit, but no, they looked super good. Back to golf talk. One more. What about Nate Lashley, winner on tour down there? I forget who he's by. That makes me think of something right now. Who's Lashley?
He's like he was super cheap. I think he was 69. I saw his name and my ears perked up a little bit too.
Yeah. So it's right there. So the talk is, and it segues in with the next question about any doc talk. You've got Doc Redman, Nate Lashley, and another guy I kind of like is Sam Burns. Who between those three do you like, or what's your take sort of on that range, those three right there?
Yeah, so this is kind of where when you get past the 8s, the bottom of the 7s offers a lot of names that I've seen thrown out. Redman is a guy that made my cut. Again, I prefer to see guys that we see have success on the PGA Tour. I think he finished second at I always confuse the 3M and the Rocket Mortgage. He finished like top 3 in one of those. Played well at the Open Championship. Lashley is interesting from probably more from a DraftKings scoring standpoint, because we have seen him just get absolutely scorching hot and make a ton of birdies for 4 straight days, which would be really cool if he did again. Obviously, the likelihood of him running out and shooting 25 under, like we saw him do at one point last year, not that high. Those other guys, I saw like Chappell trying to get some run here. He's coming back from an injury. Sam Burns, like I'm not really interested in any of those guys. For me, it's like Landry. It's Doc Redman, even Sung Kang, who we've seen win before. Like I'm focusing there. I'm not too interested in those other guys.
Yeah, it was. You're right, and it was Rocket Mortgage because Gup's Corner Community had like a 500K plus week and just smashed it. Gup was on him to be in his top 5, and he did it. So that was incredible, and many will remember that. Let's close this thing down. We'll do one final question here, and then anybody else who has more questions, hit us up in the Slack or whatever. We'll be there. Obviously, we've got to get this thing down and edited and put up so it's ready to go for anybody who couldn't tune in. And then Rick and I are going to hop back on in a little bit here, actually, just in about 27 minutes from now. We're going to hop on and do the E9 with the coin flip pod for NFL Week 2 with the same format as always, just Gups away at his member guests. So it'll be myself hosting, and then Rick's got the format down. So last question I have, Rick, tell me from 6,500 and down, 2 plays besides Ventura that you could consider, or maybe if you've got one other besides Ventura. I mean, some guys asked about Teeter. There's the Robbie Sheltons of the world. There's the Naismiths, the McNeelys, all these guys. Was there anybody else who stood out down there?
Yeah, I've got at least one. I'm scanning really quickly to see if I have another one. All right, I'll give you the one that somewhat kind of made it close to making one of my lineups. It would be Chase Seifert. He's $6,500. Did not play a lot of PGA Tour action last year, but he does have a top 10 at the Travelers, I want to say in 2018. So at least I've seen glimpses of PGA Tour upside. He was really bad down the stretch of the Korn Ferry Tour playoffs, but I think he top 10 like half of the Korn Ferry events that he played last year. And he has played the Greenbrier before. So in 2018, he missed the cut. I think he shot I want to say it was a 71 on Thursday, but he shot a 65 on Friday. Still missed the cut on the number, but I was at least interested for a guy that has played the course and shot a pretty low score, one of those rounds that he might just be more acclimated. This isn't going to be his first round at the Greenbrier. He knows he can go somewhat low here. He was the other guy that, as I was going through my research, he showed up for me.
Yeah, that's a good flyer too for the $8. Like if someone's in there, that's going to be different. It's got some history and some numbers behind it. you can't go wrong with it. We're not saying it's going to be perfect, but the obvious idea is that you got to mix it up somewhere, right? You can play some chalk. If you think that Ann is going to crush at his price, then you got to play Ann. If you think Hovland, Ann is the two you need to have in your lineup, that would be how you differentiate it. I'll give one, and then we'll get out of here. I talked about it on the DGen pod, but anyone who didn't hear it was Tyler McCumber is another guy. He's right there. I guess it would be almost like a Ventura pivot, or you could play with both of them. I just think Ventura got a lot of love this week around the small industry talk that we see go around during the swing season. But Tyler McCumber was the 2018 Player of the Year on the Mackenzie Tour, the Canadian Tour, and he had like 3 wins and 6 top 10s. Grinded his way back this year in the Corn Ferry Tour, got his seat, got his ticket, and punched his ticket to the big show. And now he's here. So I expect to hear a lot more from him. And I think 6,200 is probably the lowest price we'll ever see on him this season. So I would put him into some of your GPP lineup builds.
He also played the safe way last year. I have 4 measured rounds on him on the PGA Tour. Played the safe way last year, finished 25th. Was pretty good off the tee.
Guys, is Rick not the best? He's super sharp. I literally say a name, and before it comes off my tongue, this guy's got stats for us, and that's why we love him. So great job, Rick, and thanks so much for everything you do. Obviously, the football tools are rocking. Excited to get here, get to the next pod here we're going to do in 25 minutes or so and chat some football with you. Everybody else, thank you. We'll be in Slack. If you need anything from us, hit us up. Let us know. Other than that, we'll talk to you in a little bit.